Well, hello and welcome to the second edition of QTalks, a new online series all around the future of water powered by KTM. Now, these are designed to be bite-sized, engaging, digestible, shorter sessions that you can enjoy in the afternoon or the morning with a coffee or even something stronger if needed, and also available to watch on demand. So we're going to be addressing many different topics, from digital twins to the circular economy, investment, and much, much more. But today we are addressing water strategy in the US and how abundance can be created, hopefully in a time of scarcity. My name is Tom Freyberg. I'm an environmental journalist and content director specializing in water, and I'll be your host for the next 30 minutes. So we're delighted to say we have three thought leaders, very broad and deep panel of expertise here, right from digital through to water stewardship and strategy. So we're going to dive right in. We've basically got three sections we want to cover off. The first is a reality check, if you like, some context on the word drought we keep hearing, especially in the American Southwest. We then want to jump into the infrastructure spend and the plan, perhaps a once-in-a-generation amount of money, federal money being spent. And we then want to bring the conversation, last but not least, on to digital and the role of digital tools in America's water future. Final bit of housekeeping. We do expect everyone to be highly engaged, ask questions. If you disagree, if you agree or hopefully disagree with anything people say, please comment, ask questions, and we'll try and get round to asking as many of them as possible. So we want to jump straight in really with a bit of context, I think. And Jeffrey, why don't we start with you? I mean, you spent a considerable amount of time as the boss of the Southern California Water Utility. But how would you see the landscape changing, I think, when it comes to water availability? If you could give some kind of reflection from the last few years of your time there.
Sure. And thank you, Tom, and thank you, KTM, for putting this event together. So I've spent the last 15 years as the general manager of the Metropolitan Water District of Southern California. And Metropolitan, for background, encompasses pretty much all of the urban Southern California area, which people associate with Los Angeles and San Diego and Anaheim and that region. It serves 19 million people, which is 1 in every 2 Californians, and it gets its water from the Colorado River and from the Sierras in Northern California. And really, the entire time I was there, people started talking about it as a time of drought the last 15 years. But the reality is, this is a permanent state. The Colorado River has been in drought since the year 2000, and it's going through the present. This has become an aridification of the West. Northern California was a little more volatile. We had some big wet years, but we mostly, of the 15 years I was there, 10 of them were dry or drought years. So this has become a permanent state of existence in the Southwest, and it's something that the water managers are grappling with. We do get the benefit of the occasional wet year, but permanent dry is something that we're living with.
Thanks, Jeffrey. And from a previous conversation, you said really the infrastructure was built around expecting snowpack and snowpack melt, but actually now, as a result of the impact of climate change, really it's about capturing and harnessing that intense rainfall in a short amount of time in California.
Yes, we did design a system that was built around something like 3 dry years, 4 or 5 wet, average years, and a couple of wet years. And that really relied heavily on snowpack to melt slowly and be moved through large aqueducts and moved hundreds of miles. And what we have now is very little snow and huge amounts of rainfall. We're still getting the precipitation, which is good news, but it's coming as rain. And our infrastructure wasn't sized to capture huge events of rain, these atmospheric rivers that we're now struggling with how to capture and harness because they pretty much are out in the ocean in 72 hours, maybe 4 days.
The phrase atmospheric river, we're definitely hearing more of. But Will, let's throw to you because I know, just to maybe shake things up a bit, you have perhaps, you want to challenge the use of the word drought that you see. It's a shift to aridification of the Midwest.
I think it'd be easy for me to say that I second everything that Jeffrey said because it's really spot on. And for me, I've come to learn that language is really important if you really want to engage the public, civil society on solving water. It just won't be, our professional network. It will be civil society that supports changes in public policy, investment in infrastructure, and so on. So it's not a drought. If you ask the layperson what drought means, it means that it's temporary. And as soon as we get rain, life will be good. And, Jeff really pointed out one of the big problems. We built infrastructure and watershed management around a world that no longer exists, and it is aridification. And maybe that's not the easiest word for a layperson, but perhaps it's permanent drought, which would get a lot more attention. And then, not to go too far, but even using the word scarcity, we only have scarcity because we have a disconnect between our current reality and last century infrastructure and modeling scenarios and so on. So that's scarcity, and that needs to be addressed for us to get to abundance, which is built into the title of the session.
Fantastic. And Will, maybe just a few comments specifically on the Colorado River Basin, an area you're working in with the fund. In terms of a phrase you often use is an over allocation of a natural resource.
Yeah, again, what we're bumping into is Western water law, aging infrastructure, a fundamental over allocation of water resources, coupled with the impacts of climate change. And the Colorado River Basin is an incredibly valuable watershed for the U.S. economy, incredibly so. And Jeffrey pointed out in terms of Southern California tapping into it. Mm-hmm. So we need to figure out how to manage the Colorado and every other watershed in the face of climate change and aging infrastructure, and a set of expectations on how we manage water that is woefully out of date. So that's what we're focused on, driving technology and investor activity into the watershed, which in turn, we hope to activate changes in public policy.
Well, we'll come on to the tech piece of the puzzle a bit later on, but I think for numbers, it's 40 million people across 7 different states, right, in terms of the Colorado River. So it's a phenomenal amount of people that have relied on that water source for decades. So, Felicia, do you agree with?
Oh, go. Well, I do agree with everything that they've said, and I appreciate particularly Jeff talking about the snowpack issue, because we really use snowpack as part of our infrastructure in the sense that, that California has the most variable hydrology in the country. It's always feast or famine, but so it's in modern California is only possible with this massive infrastructure of storage and conveyance, but the snowpack is our single largest piece of storage. I think the shifting that we need to do is going to be not just to think about built infrastructure, though we need a lot more of it in different ways, particularly in recycling and stormwater capture and the like. But we need to figure out how to get those occasional deluges into our groundwater basins, which are the only thing in size and scale that can compensate for that lack of snow. Unfortunately, there's a lot going on. I think where we need to go is more intentional following each drop by watershed, in some ways getting back to what we knew 100 years ago and kind of forgot, whether it's setting, aside floodplains or other nature-based solutions in the urban context, in stormwater capture, in the more rural context, in large-scale floodplain setbacks. But I think, climate change isn't just an incremental change, it's a doozy. It is more extremes, less predictable, beyond the norms that engineers have planned for. The whole idea of a 100-year or 200-year flood is kind of out the window now, because we are going to see events that are bigger than anything we've seen and bigger than anything we can plan for. So we need to integrate nature a lot more into it. But fortunately, there's a lot we can do in the urban context. You know, losing lawns at Metropolitan has been a big leader in lawn rebates. Really, they're heroes in my book for that. You know, plugging leaks, and we'll talk about that a bit when we get to technology. There's a long way we can go. If you add recycling and stormwater capture, we'll be fine. And in the rural context, there's going to have to be a shift in crop acreage and where crops are, but there's still technological things that can help us live within our means a little bit better. I think it's just that the salad days are over.
Brilliant. Thanks, Alicia. And to kind of pivot back to Jeff, when we've talked, you said it's about leveling off the kind of the peaks and the troughs. And part of what you did was helping to press down demand. Right? That can play a really huge factor, as we know. But maybe Jeff, if for water regeneration and obviously other parts in terms of lead line replacement and PFAS removal and so on and so forth. The question I have, Jeff, is it enough?
Well, of course it's not enough. The United States really stepped out of the infrastructure funding business sometime in the 1960s. And so that was 50, 60 years ago, and left it pretty much up to the locals, districts and cities to fund infrastructure. And naturally, they fell behind. So when we're dealing with roughly a 2-generation lag in infrastructure funding, it's not going to make it up in one fell swoop. But it's a good start. It's a really good start. And there's certain things that only government can really step in and finance. You know, the really big projects, those things like a Hoover Dam, those large scale aqueducts. Some of these things really cannot be taken on by local sectors. These interstate projects or the uneconomical ones, like removing all the lead piping in a community where they're really, you can't expect individuals to pay for it. That's the kind of thing government can step in and do, and that'll be a good start with this $55 billion. It's something we need to take advantage of.
Great, thanks, Jeff. We definitely want to come on to water reuse and recycling because there's a really interesting collaboration that you've been a part of. But I was being a bit perhaps provocative with the question: is it enough? I think we all know it's going to help, but there needs to be an increased amount of investment over the years. But Will, the infrastructure spend.
Hey.
Public-private partnerships, the role of multinationals in the private sector beyond startups. That's got to be a big part of this puzzle moving forward.
Sure. I feel like I'm just going to second Jeffrey's comments again. Yeah, completely agree. Wonderful that we applaud this once in a generation investment in our infrastructure. But I view it as tragic that it's framed that way because it does highlight that we have grossly underinvested in our infrastructure for decades. And we have grossly underfunded R&D investment as a country for decades. So I say we use this opportunity to point out not just how wonderful this is and what it will do, in particular lead pipes, but also where we need to go. We need to get back to making consistent investments in infrastructure and innovation. And I would say that, one piece of the puzzle here is that if you look at the water tech startup, early growth stage companies, Kightlinger being one of them, this is a catalyst for those entrepreneurs entering the market and saying, wow, here's a big problem. There's federal money coming into this, and we can be part of it. So it's good, but for me, it's mindful of what we haven't done very well, and we can do much better.
Great stuff.
And I'm an optimist, so.
Well, optimism, I think we all welcome that in the first part of 2022 for sure. But Felicia, maybe to chime in then on Will's comments, another tone of optimism from you on the 55 billion?
But I'll just add 2 points because I agree with my colleagues on everything they've said. Two other things to think about. I do think Jeff's comments about lead and about the federal government stepping in to help fund things that communities really can't when you want to make a leap is a really good one. I'd also call out the billions of dollars to help get safe drinking water to tribes, that is not hopefully the first of many, but a real historic game changer with the federal government finally stepping up to meet its trust responsibility. So that's a very noble and important effort, as with lead. And I do think that's an important role for the federal government. I also think, in keeping with what Will said, in terms of inspiring and leveraging investment and optimism on the part of the tech sector, I think it's smart to use this money, which is certainly, it's never enough, to help leverage and incentivize investments at the local level, because 85% of it's all spent at the local level. But the federal money can help get projects off the drawing board into the ground. So, for example, in the last drought in California, the city of California alone put out $1.5 billion in grants and loans for recycled water projects, specifically with a lower interest rate, because we wanted to help move that paradigm shift and move the projects people were talking about actually into construction. And it was really helpful to meet the moment. So I think being strategic with how that federal money is spent to leverage all the other sources of money to affect change is important. It's not just a big vat of money you drop on people.
Of course, there needs to be the financial mechanisms in place to incentivize water reuse and water recycling, which is a great segue, actually. Yeah, let's bring you back in then, Jeff, on that side. I had a really interesting conversation with Gilbert Trejo recently from El Paso Water, and he phrased it wonderfully. He said water reuse should be out of diversification, not desperation. And I think that's a great way to kind of look at it as part of a long-term one tool in the toolbox to ensure kind of water sustainability. But Jeff, you're involved in a pretty amazing project that's going to lead to what could be called one of the largest water recycling projects in North America, right?
Yeah, pretty exciting. There's a fair amount of recycling throughout Southern California. About 10-12% of the water is recycled, but it's mostly in small projects. And there is one of the larger wastewater treatment plants in the United States, operated by the Los Angeles County Sanitation Districts. And Metropolitan's been eyeing this for some time, and we've entered into a partnership with them. And the idea is it would be the largest water recycled plant in the United States. We have a pilot project where we're testing the technology and how to optimize it. We're in the environmental review stage, and we expect to pull the trigger and start construction in about 2 years from now, 2023, 2024 timeframe. And it'll be completed in the early 2030s. Part of what's really exciting about it is its first phase is to shift all the groundwater replenishment in Southern California away from imported water to recycled water, freeing up that imported water for drought management and scarcity. And then what I find personally very exciting is we partnered with Las Vegas and Phoenix with the idea that we could back off some of our Colorado River water allotment if they fund large-scale recycling on the West Coast. And that sort of multi-state partnership really starts to tie the American Southwest together, help us manage Colorado River drought, and really help focus on projects we can do at scale. And I think it all brings together very nicely, and I'm pretty excited about that project.
Yeah, super interesting to see how that develops, as well as the collaboration. I mean, I remember writing on the Orange County Water District groundwater replenishment scheme, and how that's expanded over the years. And Felicia, you mentioned earlier about actually taking advantage of aquifers to kind of recharge with water as a sustainable future supply. But the pilot project that Jeff's spoken about, Felicia, it's something you were a big part of and favored, right?
Oh, I love it. Yeah, we have a paper coming out with US EPA where I got to write a chapter about it and the City of LA's project, which is also very large, and cooperation with a large agency that recharges groundwater, the Water Replenishment District. You're going to really see Los Angeles as the epicenter of climate adaptation and water from the scarcity side of things. Other places will have the flooding side of things, which is the one that makes the visuals on the news more often. But what's happening in LA is just incredible.
Fantastic. Well, for the final part of the discussion, we are moving through pretty quick as promised. We want to come on to the role of digital technology, innovation, digital tools. I think everyone hears enough headlines around AI, machine learning, But actually, what does that mean in terms of tools that US utilities can use for kind of resilient water supply? So, Will, why don't we start with you on this? I know you've just had a book published on digital water. So we want to hear kind of the role again of multinationals linking with the public sector to help scale
Sure.
digital solutions.
And of course, Tom, you've read the book front to back, right? All right. Awesome. Thank you. I appreciate that. From my perspective, analog is no longer an option for all of the reasons that Felicia and Jeffrey laid out in terms of really a shift in understanding on a real-time basis when and where we will get our water and how we're going to use it. And, think about digital as obviously a standalone technology, but also an enabling technology that gives you the ability to diversify your resources, your source of water, how you're treating water, and giving people knowledge on the quality of water, the quantity of water that they have to make better decisions. So, for me, digital is just not an option anymore. It just really isn't. So it's a matter of how do we get over, out of date mindset, and I would say also build innovative business models that make it easy for the public sector and utilities and even private sector companies to adopt digital technologies to manage quantity, quality, and equitable access, I would add also. And also, one last comment about the role of the private sector. We should always look for common ground, and we typically think about water in our respective silos. Well, both utilities, the public sector, and the private sector are very focused on healthy watersheds and everything that means, which is sustainable and resilient. And it gets into some of the solutions that Jeffrey and Felicia are talking about delivering at scale, which is groundwater recharge, reuse, sponge cities. The opportunities are impressive.
I think having that healthy watershed ambition to drive kind of cross-sector collaboration is quite a powerful mantra and ambition as well. But Jeffrey, let's come back to you then. In terms of, I want to come on to, because we know that digital tools and good data exist now. How did you see the kind of speed of adoption at your time at the utility? And do you see that kind of increasing in terms of the adoption of these tools now available?
Yeah, it's pretty exciting. What we've seen is certainly a number of our members in our districts at the retail level have really managed to adopt it. Obviously, they've got the smart metering, which has really helped them collect data and get that out to the consumer so that they can do better. The the billing mechanisms where we can really customized billing instead of these large blocks that just basically said, you pay sort of one flat fee for your water, but instead really having customized lot by lot billing systems. And we've seen it in places in Orange County and Riverside, areas that have really adopted how they can adapt smart metering to allow the consumer to really customize their water usage and stay within and make it cheaper. Obviously, you pay more as you go up the ramp, but that was really almost impossible to do because we didn't have the data to collect and to really get that out to the consumer so they could manage it, just even as of 10, 15 years ago. And so we've seen that really move throughout the retail region. We're trying to adapt to it, the larger agencies at the wholesale level, and really try and help that data assist at the retail level. And so we're still working on that, how to update our systems as well, and to really make meaningful use of all this data that's now available.
Is it good data in, good results out, right? You have to ensure that the quality is there to start with. But Alicia, I saw you nodding to a lot of points that Jeff was saying then in terms of data and digital. Where do you see this as part of the long-term strategy for water in the US?
Well, I think it's essential. I mean, there's a revolution going on in technology in terms of its treatment technology too, and its sensors and all sorts of other things. Am I still on? Oh, terrific! I'm seeing a bunch of album covers on my screen, but I'm happy to talk to Nirvana as I talk with you. there's this whole revolution happening that is incredibly exciting, and there's a lot I could say, but I'll just add again a couple points to the fine comments that have already been made. The piece that really excites me is the technology that then allows you to more cheaply target your work. I mean, that you can. There's all kinds of dashboards. There's remote sensing. There's all kinds of things going on. But one of the most exciting things is the kind of technology that allows a utility to figure out where is a leak more likely to happen, where is a pipe more likely to break, where is there a flaw. And there are story after story of people saving 90% on their traditional infrastructure upgrades that were done by year. You know, you do all the streets of a certain year, you do all the pipes of a certain year. That's massively expensive and disruptive. And being able to do the precision fixing of things allows us to fix a lot more. And that, I think, makes all of this massive change we need to make more affordable. I also think that the technologies that allow you to see where you are and monitor where you're going and how you're doing are essential to the transparency that we need to engage with customers of all sizes, to understand the way a system works so they're willing to invest in what we need to invest in to meet the freight train of pain coming at us with climate change. We can make it to the other end, but we've got to be investing now a lot more than we're used to investing. And we've got to be talking with our customers, and just talking at them with platitudes is nowhere near as effective as being able to show them the data. So it builds trust and support.
Great. Thank you, Felicia. We'll come on to you in a second. We have had a question coming from the audience, but some great points, Felicia. I think especially helping with that communication piece of the puzzle, helping to relay information to customers. I know Jeffrey said that's helped to kind of drive down demand with smart water meters. But we've had a question from the audience from Andrew Walker. But are people really interested enough in engaging on water in the basin with or without digital tech? So maybe, Jeffrey, we could get some feedback from you on that, from your time at the utility. Are people really interested enough to engage on water, whether you frame it as a healthy watershed or not?
That's a hard one. Generally, it's not. If you do a good job as a utility, then people don't have to worry about it. And Lord knows they have enough things to worry about in pandemic and everything else going on in the world, that if they don't have to think about their water supply, they just as soon not. But people, I think, are understanding we are going through climate change. The acceptance is there. People understand it, and they want to know what it means for them and their future. And they want this information. And I think Felicia had a really good point. If rather than just say climate change is real and we're working on it, if we can really show data and show how it applies to them and show how what it means for their water utility and what the investment we're asking for, what this project is going to do and how that makes things better. That's got to be critical, I think, for us to get the level of support we're going to need to do what Will was talking about. Infrastructure has to be maintained every single year. This isn't a once in a lifetime, a once in a generation moment. It needs to become an every single year kind of moment. And that becomes doable if we get the information and data to the public.
Great. Thanks, Jeff. Yeah, there's a figure that Professor Dragan Savic often quotes, is that particularly, I guess, in Europe, people think about water on average 9 minutes per year, whether that's paying a bill or reporting something's gone wrong. So I think with this technology revolution, as you phrased it, Felicia, we can definitely get people to think about water more, but at the same time, it's a paradox, right? Because you don't want them to think about it if something's gone wrong. So that's definitely an opportunity moving ahead. But Will, I know you wanted to reflect on the last section. Any comments in regards to the question?
Yeah, just real quick. Really what we're talking about is real-time data, actionable information that is democratized. So you're having a two-way conversation with stakeholders, civil society at large. That's really where we are headed, I believe. And we're to varying degrees there, depending on where you're located. So it's the actionable information and engaging people that Jeffrey talked about, and Felicia.
Fantastic. Thank you, Will. I think that's a nice note of optimism to finish on, using data in the right way to engage with people. But just to conclude, thank you to Felicia, Jeffrey, and Will for your comments so far. I know we covered a lot of ground in 30 minutes, but some interesting points coming out about the role of water recycling, about helping to drive down demand to ensure long-term water security. So again, this will be available on demand. So if you would share with your friends and colleagues, that would be much appreciated. And keep an eye out for the third installment in the KTM Talks, where we're going to go beyond talking about digital twins and talking about digital triplets. So that's the note to leave you on. But we want to thank again our speakers for a wonderful 30 minutes. And enjoy the rest of your day. Thank you.
Thanks.
Thank you.